Hello everybody, welcome to the Centbee Show. I'm your host, Lorien Gamaroff, and my co-host is the smiling, happy, shiny Kage Ntshingila. Kage, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Ms. G. How you doing, man?
I'm fine, thanks. Had a bit of lunch now, so I'm feeling pumped. I've got all the energy I need to be able to
Same here.
talk Bitcoin.
I'm sure you can tell this week.
Yes.
I think that's the problem, that we actually eat after recording.
You feel kind of tired at the end of it.
Yeah,
exactly. And if anybody wants to know, thanks for joining the Centbee Show. This is the show where we are talking about and we stick to the main topic of Satoshi Nakamoto and the Bitcoin that he invented.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people don't realize that there are many different versions of Bitcoin. There's Bitcoin Core or BTC, there's Bitcoin Cash, BCH, and Bitcoin Satoshi's Visions.
The real one.
BSV.
Yeah.
That is the Bitcoin version that follows the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper. And that is the version of Bitcoin that is meant to be used as low-cost digital cash.
Def.
It's not digital gold.
And it's the one we support.
And that is the one that Centbee supports. We have a digital cash wallet.
Yeah.
We like to think of it as mobile money on fire.
Straight up.
And if you use mobile money, if you're using something like M-Pesa in Africa or Gcash or something like that around the world, Centbee is intending to replace your mobile money wallets that you use. Those boring,
most
old-fashioned, expensive, local mobile money apps. Centbee brings the beauty of global low-cost digital cash in the form of Bitcoin SV.
I agree, Ms. G. I mean, also our users would agree with us, because Centbee enables you in many ways that also current apps can't. You can be able to shop in any country possible when you're traveling. And also you get to get paid in BSV, which is pretty awesome with our payment requests.
That's right. Just like a normal mobile money wallet, if you are receiving money or paying money, Centbee is the best way to do that. Because the fees, and we've checked it, it's more than 100 times cheaper to send money peer-to-peer on Centbee than it is to send it on M-Pesa in Kenya. So if you are using a mobile money wallet and you're not using Centbee, then you are behind the times. You're not experiencing what Satoshi Nakamoto created. He wanted, and what he developed, and what now lives on in Bitcoin SV or Satoshi Vision Bitcoin, is the low-cost digital cash, the peer-to-peer electronic cash that he defined and described in the Bitcoin white paper. The other versions of Bitcoin, even though you might hear that Bitcoin BTC is the original, what they say, yes, it's the original ticker symbol, BTC, on the exchanges, but BTC has changed the design of their version of Bitcoin
from the original protocol.
That's right. If you look at the Bitcoin white paper, it defines as the coin. In fact, I think it's in the very first part of the Bitcoin white paper. It says a coin, a Bitcoin, is defined as a chain of digital signatures. And what did BTC do? They've gone and changed that.
SegWit.
They brought SegWit, segregated witness. They strip out the signatures. Now what BTC represents is no longer what Satoshi Nakamoto had in mind for Bitcoin.
Straight up. It was also clear there, Mr. G. This is not attached to the original idea of what it's meant to be. We've said it more than once that BTC is not the original protocol, based on the SegWit reason, and also the fact that they're replaced by fee, the fact that the size of the blocks are small. So there's just a whole lot of reasons why we, state the fact that BTC is not the original.
Yes, BTC is what they call digital gold.
Yeah.
And it's not peer-to-peer because their digital gold sits on exchanges and being held by ETFs. And that's how you use BTC, right? You don't send it peer-to-peer as a cash payment.
They say the best way to use BTC is not to use it.
You can't use it if you're going to be spending $5 a fee, right?
Yeah.
So that's what the show is about. If you're interested in hearing about Satoshi Nakamoto's Bitcoin, then this is the show to subscribe to, and hit that button, that bell icon. If you haven't done it, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button.
Straight up.
This is going to be where we are consistently trying to tell the world that Bitcoin, the one that everyone thinks is Bitcoin, is not Bitcoin. And we want to bring the amazing value and elegance and incredible efficiency and the 1,000,001 use cases of Satoshi Nakamoto's Bitcoin. We want to make people aware around the world on that. So this is the show to watch. If you're not subscribing, then please do so.
Oh yeah, guys, you heard it from Mr. G. Just remember to check out the app on the stores, man, and remember to subscribe, show some love, comment, yeah. And yeah, remember, this is the real BSV plug. So yeah, get your friends clued up, link them up, you know. So yeah, mobile money on fire.
If you are wanting to receive payments, Centbee has a great payment request feature. One of the main buttons on the home screen is the receive button, and if you tap that, you'll see your QR code. Yeah. That's if you're in person and you want to receive a payment.
Yeah.
But also there's a little request button there.
Yeah.
And if you have a friend or a contact who's also on Centbee, you can just put in an amount of money that you want to receive. Let's say you've done a job for them, you've done something, they owe you money for lunch or something.
Yeah.
All you do is you put the amount in there, you select your currency, and you can send it to your Centbee contact. They'll get a notification, and they can pay you immediately. So if you do want a cool app that can easily request payments, then Centbee's the way to go.
Straight up. You heard it, guys. So yeah, remember to check out the app on the stores, yeah? So yeah, Ms. G, as we stepping into our second segment for the show, this is a continuation from our previous show. This is part 2 of it, the bad takes of Bitcoin.
Yes.
I believe that they're quite important for us to flesh out, because we need to distinguish also which Bitcoin is being spoken about in this instance.
Right. Yeah, so this bad takes series that we're doing right now, we're going to do a couple parts of this. Yeah. And the reason why we have decided to do a bad takes is because there's still, to this day, so much confusion around what Bitcoin is.
Yeah.
What Bitcoin we're talking about, as you said, and what's the purpose, and also a lot of problems that people have found with Bitcoin because of misunderstanding. And so it's worthwhile just taking a look at all these bad takes and addressing them.
Yeah.
What's funny about these bad takes is that a lot of them are true for BTC, but not true for BSV.
For BSV, yeah.
So that's why we want to be able to tease that out and discuss the differences. So hopefully after you've watched the bad take series, you will have a much better understanding about what Bitcoin it's meant to be, first of all.
Yeah.
Check out our other parts in the series, and I'm sure you're going to learn a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, Ms. G, I'm going to be stepping into our first one, and it states that the energy consumption of Bitcoin mining is too high and is harmful to the environment.
Yes. Now, everybody knows that Bitcoin has this thing called proof of work. And to have proof of work, you need banks of machines all doing this proof of work. And of course, they consume an enormous amount of electricity. And some people have even quantified that. And there's stats saying that Bitcoin BTC consumes as much electricity as the entire country of Denmark, I think I once heard.
I've seen, a couple,
So there is a tremendous amount of electricity being used in these cryptos. And for those people who look at that as something that's not very eco-friendly, this problem has come up. They said, well, Bitcoin, fine, let's just say that it's a great technology and it does a good job, but it consumes so much electricity and it harms the environment. So is it worth it? Surely we could come up with a better solution that we don't have to consume all this electricity. And so that's what brings us to this understanding around Bitcoin and the misunderstanding that it consumes more electricity than it's worth.
But Mr. G, to that point, I mean, if we're talking like, running a huge mining farm, where there's machinery and stuff like that, I can't imagine that consumes a lot of electricity.
Sure. Yeah. And it certainly does.
Yeah.
But the question is it wasteful? Now, if we were looking at BTC, for example, because if you go to coin.dance, you're going to see the amount of hash power, they call it, which essentially is how much electricity is being consumed.
Okay.
And you can see that it is an enormous amount of electricity. But also we know that there are very few transactions that can be processed in a BTC block. The blocks have been intentionally kept small at that 1 megabyte block. And so really you've got a limit of a couple transactions per second. And we're talking about 3, 4, 5 transactions per second.
But that already sounds like power intensive.
Well, if you were to then say how much energy does it take to process each transaction, you can get a number and you'll realize that it's extremely high. And so this is the problem. It's like, well, okay, you've got a secure payment system, but it costs the earth to sustain this thing. surely we can find a better alternative.
Yes, yeah.
Now, what people don't realize is that Bitcoin isn't supposed to be something that only has a few transactions per second. If you were to make each block as big as required, you could then process millions of transactions in a block. If the block is big, you don't need extra power to process it.
Yeah.
The proof of mining process really is about trying to find a random number.
Yeah.
It's not a function of the number of transactions in a block. When we're looking to calculate the proof of work, all we're doing is taking a small bit of information. We're taking the block header from the previous block, and we've got some other bits of information inside that block, and then that proof of work is calculated. So if you are calculating a proof of work on a block that only has 100 transactions in it, and you're processing the proof of work on a block that has 1 billion transactions in it, it's the same amount of work. Except on one hand, you got the 100 transactions that costs, let's say, 1,000 kilowatt hours. But if you have 1 billion transactions in that block, now you're going to divide all that electricity consumption by the billion. And suddenly it turns out that per transaction, the electricity expended on that single transaction is a tiny, tiny, tiny value. And it works out that even by using proof of work, you are still creating a more efficient system if you have unbounded blocks, the way Bitcoin was intended to be. Not a blockchain with artificially limited blocks like in BTC. That means we can have billions of transactions getting processed inside a block. And that means the power that is used to process that proof of work is a very small fraction if you were to break it down per transaction. So this idea that Bitcoin is excessive, BTC is excessive. This bad take applies perfectly to BTC. It is too expensive. It is too wasteful to only process a few transactions per second at the enormous cost that it does. But if you look at BSV, and when you look at the hash power on BSV, you'll see that it's a tiny fraction of the amount that BTC is expending. And yet BSV is able to push millions of transactions through.
The contrast is so evident.
It's so evident. It's so obvious. And when you look at it that way, you realize Bitcoin, SV, Satoshi's Bitcoin, is the most efficient transactional system in the world. More efficient than any bank system or any corporate IT system. Being able to process a transaction at a tiny fraction of the cost, an incredibly efficient system. So this take, number one, is Bitcoin consuming too much electricity? BTC sure is. But BSV, Satoshi's Bitcoin, doesn't.
Definitely doesn't, Mr. G. Because I think we've already established the fact that BSV is the original protocol. Satoshi really thought this through, like properly built a system that integrates all these industries.
Yes, and that's why it's crazy when people say he was motivated by the 2008 financial crisis and then 2009 published the white paper. I mean, come on. This took, you can just tell, decades of development, research, and learning about the different aspects of Bitcoin, and the networking and the security and the economics and the law. This idea that every Bitcoin payment is traceable and pseudonymous. So absolutely, this took a long time and a lot of brain work from a genius.
And it's quite evident. I mean, the proof of the pudding is there.
Yes.
We have products, and we can tell that the BSV community is putting in much more work versus the other side.
Absolutely.
Sure. Thanks for that, Ms. G. So we're going to be tackling our second one, and it states that Bitcoin is not backed by any government or physical asset. So its value is purely speculative.
Right. And again, let's now compare the differences. When we look at BTC, this digital gold, it's true. It's not backed by any asset. It's not backed by a government. The government isn't telling us to use BTC. So it's not a legal tender, and it's not a fiat currency, at least not a government fiat currency. And so when you look at BTC, you have to say, what is its value? And we have covered this so many times, but really you've got to think like a child on this one, because if you try and be too clever, you're going to miss it. If something is scarce, but it has no use, no utility it's not valuable.
It has no value.
No matter what you say, no matter how you try and spin it, when you are investing in BTC, you are investing in pixie dust, and the only hope you have is that there is a greater fool than you who is going to want to buy that BTC off you at some point in the future at a much higher value.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
Bitcoin BTC is about fools.
Yeah.
And if you're buying it, the only reason you're buying it, and if you think you're not a fool, is because you think there is a fool out there. But it depends on fools. Now, when you look at BSV, Bitcoin SV, Satoshi's Bitcoin, yes, it's not backed by any asset. It's not backed by a government. But guess what? It's useful. And so we can say it has a backing.
Yeah.
We can say that it's backed by its ledger, the commodity ledger.
Yeah.
In other words, a ledger that is an extremely useful tool that we can use to trace payments, trace things through a supply chain,
data, whatever,
do security, integrity, certification, ownership of assets, title deeds, transfer of assets. You can do all this amazing stuff on BSV.
Yeah.
And if the token is in limited supply and you need the token to be able to do these things, well, guess what? You now have something valuable.
The value is higher, yeah.
People need BSV tokens so they can do a job.
Yeah.
And if there is a limited supply, that means everybody's going to want to get those tokens. And now we have real supply and demand.
Yeah.
Not like in BTC, where the demand comes from people who are hoping for great fools out there.
Speculation, the narrative that's been pushed by these online influencers.
Yeah.
So it's you can tell that there's no real value there, you know.
There's no value whatsoever, but in BSV, there's real value. So it's not backed by an asset, but it's backed by a commodity ledger. You can call that an asset.
It is, Mr. G. I mean, if there's value there.
Yes,
you know.
So that's it. I think that it's quite easy to see that Bitcoin SV is something that has value, and as long as it proves to be useful, as long as that ledger is useful for something, then that token is going to be valuable because people are going to want to use it.
Yeah, because you've mentioned also in the previous episode that, you know, businesses will now start acquiring the token to build actually on the blockchain.
That's right. Businesses are already doing that. If we look at Unisat or if we look at CertiHash, those companies need Bitcoin SV because they are providing a service to a customer or something like that. So they are not buying BSV because they want to speculate on the price. They are buying BSV because they need it to run the engine. It's fuel in their engines that they are creating.
Straight up, I don't think it gets any realer than that. I mean, that's a very nice analogy to put it. Like, you know, the token is the actual fuel that people need to be, you know, helping the technology to grow.
Yeah.
And we can see the value in the BSV space, but BTC there's none.
That's right. Think of Bitcoin SV as a train, and the token is the coal that you're putting into the steam train and keeping that train pumping and flying and delivering goods and transporting people. You need that token.
Yeah. Straight up. Thanks for that, Ms. G. So we're going to be stepping into our third one, and this one states that Bitcoin is not scalable and cannot handle a large number of transactions. Yeah.
Now, of course, you know, that rings true again for BTC. They wanted to try and achieve, in their minds, what they think of as maximum decentralization. In fact, this decentralization word, we've had a whole episode dedicated to decentralization and the misunderstanding that people have around decentralization. And so one of the most important things that has handicapped BTC is this determination and drive to make sure that BTC is maximally decentralized. Now, what does that mean? Well, one of the issues that they had, and the reason why they kept the block small, is because they didn't want miners or node operators to be centralized into these large corporate entities. Because if you think about Bitcoin mining, you need to be a large corporate entity if you want to be a miner. You need to invest in significant resources, and you need to be accountable to law enforcement. And so one of the problems BTC have with this is that they don't want miners to be able to be shut down by law enforcement. That's what they're worried about.
Yeah.
They're saying the only way we can keep Bitcoin alive, because it's so dangerous to the man and he's going to want to shut it down, is to make sure that there are no single points of failure, they'll call it, or large entities that can be identified by law enforcement and can be found and hunted down.
It's actually quite contrary, because if you look at it, if you are a large entity and you are visible, it means there's a set of rules that you comply with.
Well, that definitely gets into the core of the security of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
The accountability and the honesty, because you don't want to get into trouble and lose your investment.
Yeah.
So we have this maximum decentralization where they're saying we need to keep these blocks small because we want to make sure that anybody who wants to can run a Bitcoin node, and that's a node that doesn't mine.
Yeah.
That's not a mining node.
Yeah.
And we've also, again, spoken about how non-mining nodes are useless
to the network.
They just make it inefficient and they just clog the network. They don't do any good. They only do harm. But because of that, that's why they kept the blocks small.
Okay.
And so now they are trying to create the system that is small and widely distributed. Everybody has a node so that they can verify, not trust.
Yeah.
Now, because of that, of course, it's not scalable. Yeah. And when we use the word scalable, we mean it needs to be able to grow.
Yeah.
It needs to be able to facilitate transactions on a global scale. It needs to be able to support millions of users every single day to be able to use this thing.
BTC was not planning for that because the block sizes are super small.
Not only are they not planning for it, but they are trying to plan their way around it.
Yeah.
They've taken this as their Bible and saying the book of Bitcoin, the first commandment is you shall have small blocks. Now, because of that, it means that they'll never scale.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't scale, it means that, well, who's going to be using it? Just a handful of people.
I mean, we don't even need to tap into other problems. I think that initially being the issue just shows it's quite evident that the technology has no future.
Well, that's why now they're coming up with all these different things. For years, we've had all these different attempts. I mean, segregated witness, was a way to scale Bitcoin.
Yeah.
They said, well, these pesky signatures are taking up room.
Too much data. Yeah.
And it's not like we want this to be a regulatory compliance system or legal system. We don't care. So chuck the signatures out of those transactions.
That's the worst thing they could check out.
That was the worst thing they could check. So they did it. And all that managed to do was squeeze an extra handful of transactions back into the blocks.
Yeah.
But they've got this problem. Now, let's look at Satoshi's Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And Satoshi Nakamoto was quite clear that mining is operated out of a few large data centers.
Yeah.
And it needs to grow big enough to be able to support the world's transactions, else it's never going to be useful and no one's ever going to care.
Yeah.
And of course, when you think about big blocks, if you have big blocks, it means you have more transactions.
Definitely, yeah.
And if you have more transactions, it means you have more fees.
Yeah.
Now, there is already an issue that crypto faces where every 4 years the reward halves on those blocks. Mm-hmm. Miners earn, or at least coins get distributed to them because they've already been issued right in the beginning. Satoshi issued all the coins, but now they are being distributed on this algorithmic process. Mm-hmm. And every time a block is created, a miner earns a couple Bitcoins for that. That was intending to be a subsidy while the system was growing, so that eventually the miners are earning fees from the transactions and they don't earn the reward.
Yeah.
Now, right now in BTC, they are earning the reward, which is a few Bitcoin, but they have a very few number of transactions that can go into the block, so they have to make sure that those fees are high enough to be able to make their mining profitable.
Yeah.
But they can't get more transactions into those blocks.
Yeah.
So the only way they can make income is by raising the fees. So when a miner wants to mine a transaction, that he picks that transaction up, and there's a fee attached to that transaction. Mm-hmm. Every Bitcoin transaction has a fee.
Yeah.
And so the miner will then put that transaction into his block, mine the block, and whatever transactions are in there, he collects the fees. BTC needs to raise the fees on the transactions because it needs to make up the lost income as the reward is halved over the years.
So the miner raises the fee.
Well, the miner only selects transactions which has high fees.
Okay. So I would actually pump up the fee.
Well, now because you're competing to get into that block, if you're a user.
Yeah, as a user.
And now the block is full, the miner's taken all the transactions he wants.
Yeah.
How are you going to get into that block? Well, you're going to have to raise your fees. So the miner looks and says, oh, that's a juicier fee than this transaction in my block. Let me throw that one out, put yours in.
That's crazy, yeah.
So this is what BTC has to do is raise the fees. But BSV, what it does to scale is it just makes those block sizes unbounded. That is the ultimate configuration for BSV. There's a journey to get there. This is what is happening with Terranode and everything that's going on around it. But those blocks are going to essentially become unbounded. In other words, miners are going to just decide how big they want that block to be. Because if that miner wants to earn more income, they will make the block as big as they want, so they can collect as many transactions into that block as possible. Now, what's also interesting is that when there are many transactions and when miners can have as many as they like and earn as much income as they like, that is what creates competition. Because now miners are going to realize, wow, if I just accept 1 billion transactions into my block, I'm going to earn so much more money than the guy who's only putting in 500,000 transactions into his block. So going back to the whole idea of decentralization and scale, BTC, they think that they are achieving decentralization by limiting scale. And a thing that you'll often hear with respect to scaling Bitcoin BTC is they say that there is a trilemma. A trilemma means you've got a choice between 3 things. You can't have them all. You can have maybe a little bit of this one, and a lot of that one, but you can't have a lot of all of it. And in BTC, the trilemma is security, decentralization, and scalability. So they're saying, look, unfortunately, you can't have all 3. You can't have decentralization, you can't have scalability and security all in one.
But the original protocol was meant for all of those things to coexist.
That's what original Bitcoin does. Bitcoin gives you those 3 things. But that's because Bitcoin SV doesn't have that notion that we need to keep the system maximally decentralized with all these non-mining nodes. The intention through mining is that mining centralizes into a handful of miners around the world. I'm not talking about thousands. I'm not even talking about hundreds. Possibly tens of nodes out there around the world. 10 of them. That's all you need. Maybe even less. And then they are motivated and incentivized to add investment to their infrastructure to be able to make sure that they process these giant blocks. Now, people on the BTC side are going to say, well, that's no good. We don't want a system like that where there's just a handful, because what if the government wants to shut them down? Well, guess what? Bitcoin SV has already thought about that, because the government doesn't want to shut down Bitcoin SV, not if it's traceable,
it's compliant,
pseudonymous, regulatory compliant, and it links identities, and it does other things like now what is coming are things like the travel rule, which is this Financial Action Task Force guideline. And that means, you have to transfer personal information. So Bitcoin SV already can do that. And it intends to have a system where there are just a few miners all competing with each other and behaving honestly. Because if they don't, Satoshi's vision was that if a miner behaves dishonestly, it's the law that comes and shuts the guy down and puts him in jail and locks him up and punishes him. Not the tech.
Rightfully so. I mean, you can't be above the law.
Yes, you can't be above the law.
Or operate above it,
Satoshi's Bitcoin is not something that operates above the law. It operates within the law. The security of Bitcoin comes from the man with the badge and a gun. In other words, if you break the law, if you process a double spend transaction as a miner, if you don't comply with a rule to freeze funds from a terrorist, then what's going to happen? You are going to be arrested and you are going to be held accountable and you're going to lose your investment. That is what protects Bitcoin.
And the best part is that they can trace you,
They can trace you.
This is not a finding game. This is, we know who you are. We're going to seize your assets and arrest you.
Yes. That is what secures Bitcoin. Not the millions of kilowatts that get burned in those mining systems. That's not what's securing Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not secured through the proof of work, but the proof of work ensures that the miner behaves honestly and doesn't break the law and does the right thing. So this is probably going to blow your mind if you guys have heard this for the first time. Everybody up to this point thinks that proof of work is this complicated process that is energy intensive, and that is this brute thing that secures Bitcoin. And the only way you can unravel that is if you go and spend as much electricity and energy and money to try and roll back that blockchain or create a new block with fake transactions or do whatever it is. That's not what secures Bitcoin. The legal system secures Bitcoin. And it's crazy. So now we're going back to the trilemma. BTC thinks, okay, fine. Well, we want decentralization. And we want security, so we want mining. But we can't have scalability, because if we're going to have the max decentralization and everybody's got a Raspberry Pi node, well, guess what? We can't have scalability. If you want scalability and you want security, well, you can't have decentralization.
To give or take.
So they are locked in this loop because they don't realize that we do want a few miners out there that are visible to law enforcement. That's what we want. We don't want miners that are anonymous and users and everybody that's out there that nobody knows what's going on.
I can't, honestly, Ms. G, like every time we talk about this, like I fail to see where it actually makes sense regarding having like all these nodes like running on individual laptops. It doesn't make sense to have a financial system like that.
It certainly doesn't, and it doesn't work. It doesn't achieve anything. It doesn't make the system work better.
Nothing.
Yes. So it's a fake trilemma, the BTC trilemma. They've imposed this trilemma on themselves, and this is what has cut them off. They cut them off at the knees. They can't run. They can't do anything. They're now stuck. And all their hope is on a new technology like Lightning or something like that coming along that will then solve this trilemma, and they can have all those things that they want. But Bitcoin SV already solves all of that. There is no trilemma in Bitcoin SV.
Without even having to want to implement another layer of transactions.
Yes. We've got security. We've got that proof of work, and we've got accountable institutions, miners running it. We've got scalability with an unbounded block size, millions of transactions at extremely low cost. And by having those extremely low fees, we get more transactions. And having unbounded block sizes means now that miners are going to want to compete for that profitability, those fees.
And like I always say, that's a very healthy, organic, environment for anyone to grow in. You know, because like we always say, the real value of this tech is people actually building on the blockchain, and the utility around it.
We've got the scalability, we've got the decentralization, and we've got the security. Now it's up to the rest of us. Satoshi solved that problem. And the businesses that are involved with scaling BSV and building new node infrastructure, great, let them carry on. But it's up to us as entrepreneurs to find ways to use the system. Now, a lot of people will say, well, Bitcoin is just this solution waiting for a problem. That's not actually true. And if you go and look at the bsvblockchain.org website and you go and look at the companies there, you're going to see how many different companies in different industries from entertainment to health to
everything,
education,
agriculture, literally every industry.
There are so many people who have clicked onto a way of using this BSV blockchain, and they are now exploring that, and they are ahead. They are the ones who are pushing the innovation and blazing a trail ahead, and everybody else is behind.
Big time.
So now this is an opportunity. Go and look at that website, bsvblockchain.org. Go to the partners, or not the partners, is there a companies section there?
There's I think it's companies or projects.
That's the one. We'll put a link in the show notes.
Definitely.
And you can see all the different companies, what they're doing, how they're using blockchain, and maybe you can get an idea. Maybe you'll see a company there that's trying something but just not exactly hitting it right, and you've got a better idea, a way to fix it. dive in. There are a lot of venture capitalists out there now who are waking up to this BSV blockchain idea, and they are looking for businesses. So this is a brand new world. It's like the internet of the 90s, the early days. This whole Bitcoin thing's been around for 15 years, but it's still back in the dark ages. It's still like everybody went to sleep and nothing's happened for the last 10 years.
That's so true,
You know, everyone's now focused on cryptos and NFTs and all this.
And honestly, if you put it like that, we would be so far ahead if like we all focused on the true protocol. Like, geez, like 15 years is a long time to bring about change.
Yeah, that is the problem. Most people don't understand Bitcoin. And it just shows when you look at what's going on out there and you see these people out there shilling this idea of Bitcoin, digital gold. We will look back on this time.
We will.
And we'll look at those people and say, wow, how foolish were we?
Yeah.
Anyway.
And at least, we try to plug our viewers. So guys, just remember to check out the show. Subscribe, show some love, Mobile Money on Fire. So Ms. G, I mean, we have covered like a couple of those bad takes in our part 2, but I still think that we need a part 3 just to wrap up all of these bad takes, because there's quite a lot.
Too many. Part 3, part 4, part 5, who knows?
So cool. Ms. G, we're going to be stepping into this week's user questions and feedback. And our first one comes from Thomas James. Thomas is saying, I love you guys, BTC to 0 and BSV to the moon.
Great. Thanks, Thomas. We love you too. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. We really appreciate comments like that. Gives us a warm, fuzzy feeling and makes us want to continue. So thank you very much.
Straight up. Thanks, Thomas. Our second one comes from Xerxes, and they are saying, they're actually asking a question. What is your guys' opinion on the Electrum SV wallet?
Electrum SV is a great Bitcoin wallet if you are more of a technical user. It's got a lot of features, a lot of powerful stuff in there. It's meant for power users, I would say, of BSV, especially if you like to import wallets and all that sort of thing. So it's runs on desktop. I don't think there is a mobile version for that.
Okay, it's a little bit more technical.
It's a more technical for a power user, somebody who really knows what they're doing and wants to see the nitty gritty of what's happening in the Bitcoin. You'll see your transaction IDs and your addresses and stuff. So it's a great wallet backed by some great developers. It's also open source. If you go onto GitHub, you'll be able to find it there.
Oh, that's cool.
Written in Python. So if you want to find a wallet to play around with, if you want to look at the code and you want to understand what's going on in the background there and maybe even contribute to the project, check it out on GitHub. If not, if you just want to use it and download it, go for it. Give it a shot. Yes, I definitely can give it 5 stars. Power SV wallet for your desktop.
Straight up. Thanks for that, Zessis. Our third one comes from Moose and Whoop. How is this Moses in Afrikaans?
Well, I don't know.
Well, he's saying Moose and Whoop, and I'm assuming it's Afrikaans because he's saying, nice to see South Africans in the space. Up and up. Machanas.
Yeah, cool, good. Thanks for shouting out. Yes, we are South African. That's where we live and where we are building out Centbee Wallet. It's a cool country, South Africa. It's a gem on the African continent. It's beautiful here. There's always been a cliche about Bitcoin and Africa. Bitcoin will rise in Africa. And we certainly have believed that for a very long time. And we are part of that. We want to bring it here to Africa. We see how the cost of digital transactions are so high, even using mobile money like M-Pesa or Airtel, the fees are so high, very limited cross-border capabilities. And so we want to make that cliche a reality. We want to bring Bitcoin to Africa and the world, but we're very fortunate to be down here at this beautiful country, and we can look at north and see all these countries that we can affect.
Because that's how I see it. We're literally looking up, like we're trying to take over the entire space.
Yes.
And I feel like we're getting the Centbee because our user base is growing.
Yes. I mean, our largest users are in Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana. So we've got a huge amount of users across the continent. And we are very passionate about it.
Straight up.
Yeah. So shout out to the South Africans.
Thanks for that, Moose. So, Ms. G, I think we've actually come to the end of our show.
Okay, good. I think that this whole series that we're doing right now with Bitcoin Bad Takes is a very nice kind of overview and summary of really what we're trying to accomplish with the show. We want to dive into all of these bad takes to try and express and show you how a lot of them are just takes that are based on different versions of Bitcoin entirely, not even on Satoshi Nakamoto's Bitcoin. This idea of trying to keep blocks small so we can have maximum decentralization, and it's all about digital gold. That's got nothing to do with Satoshi Nakamoto or Bitcoin. It's all fake news. And BTC are trying to create something that is different from what Satoshi Nakamoto wanted. BTC has got nothing to do with low-cost digital cash. It's not going to save anybody from high costs of fees. It's not going to transform Africa, no matter what anybody says. It's got no use to anybody. Apart from just this gambling hope.
Like I always say, the big boys.
Yes, the elite out there that have the ability to access all these things. So we're happy that we can go ahead and tackle these misconceptions, these bad takes in a nice, neat way. We're hoping to have them done in a couple episodes. But really, if you watch these episodes, you're going to get a very different take on Bitcoin compared to what the mainstream sees as Bitcoin. And I'm sure by now people who watch the show mistrust the mainstream. In fact, that's a very important thing about crypto is that people don't want to be or follow the mainstream. We feel lied to and all that. And the irony is that BTC is now the mainstream.
It is.
It's got nothing to do with, like you always say, the man in the street or just the common person who just wants to live their lives and be enabled. BTC is something else.
We are basically going against the narrative right now.
We are not the mainstream, but we're growing. I think the fact that we are telling the truth and enlightening people here, it's catching on. It's refreshing. So far, if you've watched every one of our shows, we've never shown a price chart.
Never.
We're not talking about how to draw lines and make patterns. And
that will never happen on this show.
No, we don't care about that. But we do want to help you avoid all that. Because that's not what it's about. It's not that we're buzzkilling the vibe. We want to show you that there is a real path to riches here by just understanding this technology so that you can go and benefit and do wonderful things with it. We want to see the BSV ecosystem grow. We want to see Satoshi Nakamoto's vision for this idea. We want to see it happen. We haven't had a chance yet to see if Satoshi was right, if he had a good idea. We want to see that. And the crypto mainstream is walking in the complete opposite direction.
They're walking off a cliff.
Yes, they're all walking off a cliff, and we are those lone voices walking in the opposite direction. And everyone's calling us out and thinking that we're the weirdos. Turn around.
And it's actually, Mr. G, it's quite funny, like what we're saying. Like right now we may be seeming all geeky and stuff, like us talking about BSV, not pushing the whole cool BTC narrative. But this is more for the long haul and looking into the future. And like I always say, it's inevitable where BSV is going.
Yes, exactly. So if you do have a phone camera and you have access to YouTube, put some content out there. We need more soldiers out there. Satoshi shoulders. Say that fast 3 times. Satoshi.
So it's actually a tongue twister. Satoshi soldiers.
Yes, we need some Satoshi soldiers out there, everybody. And if you understand BSV and if you can create content, put it out there. The more of us that are out there, the quicker we're going to get to this place that we want to be in, which is this useful world built on BSV blockchain.
And like you always say, Mr. G, this is not an infomercial. This is an educational space for, the young ones to understand this tech we all benefit. It's not just us pushing the wallet out there, but everyone needs cheaper transactions, money getting there quick, an immutable ledger. We all need that. We all need that.
We do. Yeah. And it's available now. Satoshi's vision is available. BSV, Bitcoin SV. Check it out.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Kage, thanks very much for the chat.
Thanks.
It was good to go through these bad takes. And I want to thank everybody for joining us here on the Centbee Show. Please come back soon.